I finally did a jet recap, and guys, I'm taking away the thing. I'm taking away the explosive fists. It's not a power. Just having his power as swordsman. My power as swordsman is much easier. So let's MF and go! I did a giant recap that I can't MF and remember. Okay, I'm kidding. I know it. We left off with Christian on top of the train while John and Arlo are running away. When Arlo would trick John, Christian would say, I'm just gonna watch. See what this guy does. He said, when Arlo says, we're miles away from society, no one's here to help you. Out of nowhere, he hears a voice saying, yeah, there is. And cracks through Arlo's mirror and says, Arlo, I can't believe you, you son of a... And knees him in the stomach. Then he says, you dare disrespect an ace? Throws him up in the air, and then he says, shining slash, blitzing from everyone's vision, slicing Arlo, cutting him, saying, come on, Arlo, let's have some fun. When John would still be beaten senselessly by May and the Demon Claws girl and the airbending boy, I'm kidding, John would unlock his ability. Christian's like, oh, this could be interesting. John, he says, what? You can tear at Arlo. I don't feel like doing it. He says, you are lazy. He says, yep. I'm not here to deal with this crap. This is on you, John. He says, whatever. And then John just wrecks them. Christian just walks. He says, Elaine, come heal them. What happened? He said, Arlo is us. And then he just says, nothing. And I'm just going to say nothing. And walk back. Christian would grab John and run up and blitz off with them, saying, yo, Serafina. He'd say, hey, Serafina, nice to see ya. She says, oh, hey. And she says, what's wrong with John? He says, maybe I'm explain. Get Elaine. When Elaine would come, everything would go normally. And yeah, when they get back to school, everything would go normally, except for the part where, when they're in school. Nah. Christian would decide that it's time to take full action in his plan. What is his plan, you ask? Well, his plan is to tear down everyone. He wants to stop all Wellston bullying so everyone can live in peace in Wellston. Saying, alright, time to go do this. He'd be running through the school. Everyone's like, why is he running? They're like, why is he running so much? Everyone's like, so that's, he says, Blake, Eisen, I have a job for you. He says, what's your job? Go around the entire school, run around the entire school, and stop any fight. He says, why? My plan is to stop Wellston bullying. Because it's annoying. Legit. Us high tiers have to do this every single day, so we have to stop it. Because the low tiers can't really do a lot since, well, they're low tiers. That was one with the ability level of 9. So all of us are going to go around the school. But then Remy arrives. He says, yo, oh, hey, Remy. He says, I have a job for all of us. And he says his plan, and she says, well, that's actually something I'd want to do. So they'd rush around the school, stopping everyone from getting bullied. And once that's over, Chris would head over to John's house and say, yo, what up, John? He said, what's up? And John would be in one of his moods today. He'd be like, what do you want? He's like, alright, well, you're in a mood today. He says, I'm just not happy. Not happy with Arlo. He says, how'd you know? He says, dummy, I was there. He says, why didn't you? And he says, I did! By beating Arlo to death and letting you defeat him, because I just didn't care. Because it's Arlo. I have no grudge. He says, what the? moving on to the thing where Seraphina gets her ability taken. Of course, everything would be normal until Arlo and Christian and, well, Elaine arrive. They talk about how Seraphina was on the floor, blah, blah, blah. He'd say, alright, guys. But then, when they all go to sleep, when Christian's still awake, he's like, and when John falls asleep, out there, Christian would walk into the room and sit on a chair waiting. Then when the glass breaks, he's like, a smirk comes on his face. He's like, and once the person sees him, he's like, you lucky idiot. Today is not your lucky day. 'Cause now, you're dead. He said, now you are dead. But then, more of them are raiding. He says, alright, yo, John, Arlo, little help here. They say, what's going on? Yeah, tons of people are trying to kidnap Seraphina. So, yeah. I'm kidding, that wouldn't happen. Let me actually tell you what would happen. So, they would all be in the living room except for Seraphina. She'd be in John's room thingy. But then when they hear the glass break, they all wake up. They say, what's going on? When they see Seraphina sticking out the window, they'd bust through the window. He'd say, bust down! But then when the robber would come in, Arlo would just tackle him and say, you're dead. Chris would say, now, Arlo, I want to torture him. Stabbing him, saying, just keep on stabbing. Until he finally talks, which he doesn't actually talk. Christian just kills him, says, whatever, you useless piece of crap. And then he'd say, Boruto strike! Okay, I'm kidding, I was getting too interested in the Shinobi Striker match. He'd immediately say, let's go! So then he'd jump out the window, and he'd appear right in front of the guy who grabs her. You know, he'd say, don't move! With a smile on his face, or you'll die. And you don't want to die, do ya? He's like, oof. So once that would happen, he'd be like, alright then, well this is a little uninteresting, don't you think? And then when the car would come, Christian says, John, now, activate it! When John tries to do the barrier, it doesn't work. Christian would say, alright then, I guess I'll do this! And then slide next to the van, slamming his sword into the tire, popping it. Then going around, keep on slamming it. When he's about to get stabbed, he grabs that arm and kicks it, knees him in his stomach, and slams him and says, nice try, buddy! And then he goes, brrrr, and slices off the last tire. And then he says, you won't be able to move without these. Then cuts off part of the tire, the part of the wheel, keeps on cutting him off, saying, now you can't move. You're dead. Then John's barrier would finally work, but not before all the tires are sliced off. Christian would say, John, I got this, don't bother with it. Then he'd slice the car to the side, cutting it open, then punching one of them, and then kicking them so far that they get out of the house range. He's like, dang it! He says, why did you let them go? He said, there's no point anymore. They're gone. They're gone, they're gone. He says, but we could have had them. He says, it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't give us anything. Not even if we beat them senselessly. They're used robots. They have no souls. What do you think that girl was holding Seraphina? She didn't even care. She just wanted her job done. So, basically, what I mean is that they really didn't care about their lives. Because if you think about it, that guy did say that his life was more important than her life was much more important than his. He'd say, wow, that's the smartest thing you've said all day. He's like, Christian says, really? You want to test that theory out, Arlo? He's like, And everyone just goes home, and the next day he sees John and Serafina getting beaten up. He's like, idiot. He appears right next to Zeke and punches him, saying, into the locker, bending the locker metal, saying, you idiot! And grabbing him and slamming him all around. And then pulling out a sword and saying, I will send you, making you go to the hospital so I can stitch up your entire body after this. And slicing right through, not through, but piercing right into his stomach. The sword goes through him and says, you guys alright? He pulls them up and says, don't worry, he won't be doing anything. But then, everything would go normal with all the Joker crap. But until it happens. Serafina is taken by those students, and John would just bust in, just wreck them all. Chris would say, whatever, and wouldn't even be bothered until the first attack, when Eisen is immediately attacked and says, Eisen's got this. But once he starts getting beat down, he says, why aren't any other high tiers doing anything? When Eisen's about to get punched, Christian appears and says, with a sword and blocks, says, you wouldn't plan on doing this, would you? Trying to kill a high tier? 'Cause you're gonna regret it. If anyone who tries to kill my friends will die. Then he'd appear right next to the Joker and punch him in a wall and say, nice try, buddy, but this is not how it works. And cuts the Joker up. Is about to rip off his mask, but then the Joker disappears and runs off. He says, alright. He says, yo, Eisen, you alright? He says, thanks, you saved my title and me. He says, that's fine, that's what I'm here for. He says, no more high tiers. Chris would say, I'm done with this Joker business. I'll let the rest of them take care of him. So the next thing would be Blake, and Blake would get absolutely incinerated. Chris would say, alright, Blake lost his status. He's like, yo, he visits Blake in the hospital and says, yo, Blake, you alright? He says, what does that look like? He says, God, just saying, I mean, like, once you're done, once he attacks most of the high tiers, I'll step in fully. I don't step into stuff that's not in my league. That's below me. Arlo should be able to handle it. Then walks out of the room. Next would be Celine. She'd get bodied, of course, because John is working with her. Next is the fight with Remy. Remy would get bodied. And then after all the high tiers do their little plan thingy to fight the Joker, when they all get bodied, Christian and Arlo steps in. Christian says, Arlo, I'm coming. When Arlo goes down, Arlo gets absolutely bodied, and Christian said, alright, time to step in. And jump down and say, yo, Joker, it's over. And disappear. And stab the Joker right in the arm, saying, I aren't ruthless with people who hurt my friends. And knee him in the stomach, saying, goodbye, Joker. I will be right back. I'm coming! God. I am back with it. Let's get started. So, after fighting with the Joker for a little bit, he says, no one fights like this except for John. Hold on a minute. He's about to get kneed. Then he grabs the knee and says, and grabs it and spins, and then grabs the face and slams, then rips off the mask and says, John, I had a feeling it was you. He says, and Seraphina's like, John? He'd be like, John, why would you do it? He says, 'cause no one protected her. He said, I was doing that entire time, in the shadows. Every time she was attacked, I destroyed them. Why do you think I sent an entire team? What do you think Blake, Remy, and Eisen were going all around the school, beating other people up? Because I told them to. I told them to stop all the bullying going on. So, believe me now, John? He says, what? Why now? Back to this, he says, John, I did all that. He goes, what? And he says, John, I know how you feel, but this is not about you. You should go back to being a normal person, and I'll rise your status up. I'm taking the new role as king, since Arlo, yeah, I'm looking at you, Arlo, has done nothing. Nothing. So I'm gonna take over now. I am your new king of Wellston. Bow down to me. So he says after that, alright, that's all I have to say. John, you will be my assistant. We will go around saving the school. In the process, I will be developing a cure to Seraphina's illness, and then you guys can be going back. You will be my assistant until Seraphina is cured. And that, guys, is it for part 4 of